Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us Across the Fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. There are many myths when it comes to farming. Notions of living off the land or raising crops and livestock often run counter to reality. There's no doubt farming is a tough business, but it's also rewarding and necessary and important. The University of Vermont Farmer Training Program is teaching the next generation of farmers. Through hands-on learning, business planning, and a lot of sweat equity, the program teaches students to become stewards of the land. Across the Fence's Keith Silva has our story.
It's harvest time at the UVM Catamount Educational Farm.
You get all of it here. You get all the practical stuff, the academic stuff, theoretical stuff. You get to apply it. It's great.
The people pulling carrots, picking apples, and harvesting heads of lettuce are enrolled in the UVM Farmer Training Program. Over the past 6 months, students have learned it all, from the root to the fruit, and everything in between. It's education from the ground up. Sarah DeSantis is the program's co-director.
Farmers are not just people that cultivate in the land. They need to know how to do accounting. They need to know how to write a business plan. They need to know how to market. They need to, in this day and age, you need to know how to do social media and how to come up with a soil fertility management plan, how to run a tractor, hopefully how to fix a tractor. So a farmer is all of those little things, and we're hopefully giving them the first steps to figure out how to do all those little things.
This is farming by doing. Hands-on, dirt under the fingernails kind of work every farmer knows well. Sam O'Brien has become a quick study on what needs doing on the farm day in and day out.
Well, we got to keep the whole farm running, so there's no shortage of weeding and planting stuff and harvesting. That's a big one for our CSA. So a lot of our time spent here is doing physical work, trying to keep up with the place.
When the students aren't in the field, they're in the classroom.
In 1 ton of dairy manure.
The program comprises 90 hours of instruction from UVM faculty and guest lecturers. Students also visit local farms to network and to learn one-on-one from experts in the field.
There's so much to learn, and how to create this patchwork quilt of all of these pieces into one hopefully successful farm business.
Andrea LaLumiere spent a decade working in tourism and hospitality before enrolling in the program.
After 10 years in customer service and just being on all of the time, step back and kind of think about what I need from my interactions with the planet and the people who I love, but maybe need a little more space from. Farming is that balance. And then throw in an agritourism component and I'm a happy girl.
Like many other students, LaLumiere didn't come to this class totally green, and she didn't come here thinking she heard it all before.
Farming's in my blood. My family farms. My family's been farming in the Champlain Valley since the 1930s. So it's just something that's always been a part of my life. I don't know if I came here being I know that. I came here with a lot of questions about why are the raspberries that I'm growing doing this? I think that learning about how nutrients move through soil has been the most challenging thing for me to learn, but also once it started to click, it just kind of changes the way that you look at plants and their relationship to soil and organic matter.
S.A. O'Brien Farm.
O'Brien took a more direct route than LaLumiere. He came here right out of high school. He's got passion, and better yet, he has a plan.
I'm in the process right now of starting up my own farm. Opened up a small snap pea operation this year, sold to a few accounts in the area, and I'll be expanding next year, taking on a few more accounts and more crops. I'm young yet. If I'm going to do it, better do it now. It's risky, it's a chance, but it's what I've always wanted to do with my life, and I'm going to chase it down.
As important as operating farm machinery and knowing what to harvest when, participants in the UVM Farmer Training Program learn the difference between the farm business and the business of farming.
You could go work on a farm and learn how to harvest and weed, right? But you're not going to understand why those decisions were made. We're really about, one, learning how to do the practical skills, but also how and why you're doing that. So why is this prioritized? Why is weeding the carrots today specifically prioritized over harvesting tomatoes, which we're going to do tomorrow? So we want to teach the how and the why. We're really about teaching hands-on skills, but also the management decisions that are going behind farming.
In order to graduate and receive a certificate in sustainable farming, students write a business plan that has to be approved by the instructor. For LaLumiere and O'Brien, gauging success means being environmentally and financially sustainable.
Compost or manure, right?
It's the farm business. It's not just a farm, it's a business too. And that's like, I think one of the biggest takeaways from all of the farmers that I talk to is that, like, if you don't value yourself in your business, you're not going to design a farm business that is sustainable. So making sure that you're like paying attention to all of your inputs and putting value on the ecosystem services and your physical services and time is essential to successful business.
If you don't understand the business of it, you're not going to last very long. You got to be able to understand financials and forms and banking and all that. It's the same thing with any business. You got to understand the numbers, you got to be able to run them and they come out ahead.
It takes half a year to complete UVM's farmer training program. And like anything worth doing, there's always more to learn.
I'd say if you want to get into farming and you don't have a whole lot of experience, or even if you do have a lot of experience, I'd say just come here. There's so much you can learn. Even if you think you know it all, you really don't. And it's endless what you can learn here, pretty much.
These students, check that. These farmers learn a lot in their time here. Now it's up to them to take that knowledge and continue to grow. In South Burlington, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Applications are now being accepted for the 2020 program, which will run from May to October. You can visit the website on your screen for more information about the curriculum and the costs. All around the world, pollinators are in decline. The reasons vary, but there are things we can do to help. Across the Fence spoke with one of Vermont's pollinator experts about what's happening and what steps we can each take to help pollinators survive.
We're definitely hearing a lot about pollinators, and it's really good and it's really great. I'm really glad that the public is now becoming aware of what's going on with the pollinators. 80% of global plants are dependent upon pollination services, insect pollination services. So imagine if we lost 80% of our species, what would we have? And it wouldn't be just about we humans, but the whole biodiversity of all. Think of all of the wildlife that is dependent upon fruit production, and the pollinators themselves are actually food. Most of our birds in their will feed their babies, larvae stage of pollinators. So think of the whole bird population as if we didn't have pollinators, if we didn't have the insect population, we would not have, and the scale just continues to go up. Our biodiversity would just die. And at this point, our knowledge of what all of our quantity, our reduction in the diversity and amount of pollinators is just really being studied. We're just at the tip of the iceberg of learning what's going on, but everyone is definitely recognizing that they're under threats. The most obvious threats are pesticide use and our habitat fragmentation and just disruption, destroying of habitat.
How could a decline in pollinators affect Vermonters?
Let's talk about our farm here, Riverberry Farm. Without pollinators, our strawberry production would be pretty abysmal. We wouldn't have much for strawberries. Same with our raspberries. And then some of our crops, you know, like we were talking about the tomatoes, we definitely rely upon pollinators. We just open up the sides of the greenhouse and hope for the bumblebees to come in and help out with the pollination in there. Certainly with our eggplants and our peppers, with our melons, without melons, our squash plants. All of the squash family is dependent upon a specific bee. It's a squash bee. It's a native bee. It's not something we introduce or manage. It's something we need to have in the landscape so that we can get all of our squashes, both the summers and the winter squashes. So yeah, we wouldn't actually be able to have much food production if we didn't have more pollinators. So it's important on our farm that we try to maintain habitat. We're trying to maintain habitat within 300 feet of every portion of our farm because that's what we consider a reasonable flying distance for bees. So, some can go several miles, but some can only go a short distance. So we're working to try to create this whole mosaic, sort of corridors and patches of habitat within our farm.
What does pollinator habitat look like?
So when you're talking about pollinator habitat, like almost any sort of, when you talk about the ecological services of any animal, you immediately get into the habitat needs, which would be then, there's kind of like three major prongs of that. There's their food, their water, and their shelter. Most native bees are ground nesting, so they like loose, pliable, like sandy or light soils. If you don't have loose, pliable, open, bare ground, you can consider putting in a sandbox, creating a sandbox, maybe 12 to 18 inches deep, and just pick your length, your size of it, and put it in a spot where it doesn't look like a kid's sandbox. Because you really don't want ground nesting bees interacting with people. They're generally not super aggressive. Most of them are solitary. They nest individually. Bumblebees will have more complex nesting sites, and they're really attracted to like mouse dens, old mouse dens, or any kind of cavities. The other 20–30% of native bees are going to be looking for hollow-stemmed or pithy-stemmed plants like raspberries, elderberry, sumac. So keeping a lot of those native wild areas.
Anything else that you want people to know about what the problem is or what the solution might look like?
I think it's really exciting, the idea of people getting out and just starting looking, paying attention. It's like, instead of taking this attitude towards insect, what is that insect, and I don't want it in my landscape. It's like, what is that insect, and what's it doing? I wonder if it's actually pollinating that plant, or see it nibbling on a leaf. What is that pollinator? What is that plant? Is that a native insect, and is it eating a little bit of my native plant, and it's getting nourishment that's keeping it alive? Changing our aesthetic about our landscape and thinking of it as a habitat not just for us, but habitat for all kinds of organisms will be such a change in our attitude that we will learn to love looking at the life that we create in our landscape.
Our thanks to Jane Sorensen of Riverberry Farm in Fairfax. And once again, thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.